Hi, I'm Sydney,
And I'm Jake.
and you're listening to Two for the Matinee.
Join us today as we talk about Picnic at Hanging Rock and Point Blank.
So spoiler warning, because these movies are about to be spoiled.
Speaking of feminism, Picnic at Hanging Rock. Tell us what the hell this movie's about.
Picnic at Hanging Rock, 1975, directed by Peter Weir. On Valentine's Day 1900, three Australian schoolgirls and a teacher vanish into thin air while on a school outing to Hanging Rock, an ancient geological formation. One is found, and the other three are never seen again.
It makes it sound like this actually happened. It did not. It's all fictional. So let's get that out of the way.
Well, to be fair, the author, Joan Lindsay, says that something did happen to her when she was a girl visiting Hanging Rock in the year 1900. We don't know what that was.
What does that even mean? She had her first period? How old was she?
I think she was five years old.
Wow.
Something happened to her. She had a profound experience while on a picnic at Hanging Rock. She never said what it was.
I don't trust 5-year-olds.
But whatever it was, it left enough of an impression on her that she ended up writing the book when she was 71 years old.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie. It's interesting because while I was watching it, I kept trying to figure out what the hell was going on, what the point of all of this was. And then looking back on it, it's kind of grown on me. I've been thinking about it. I think part of it is it kind of reminds me. It's got like sort of elements of the giallo genre, like the Italian horror of the 70s and 80s, where it's like mysterious and kind of there may or may not be supernatural, and it intertwines with like very mysterious music. But this movie, I feel like it's very much up to interpretation when it comes to a lot of different things. And I was wondering if you thought it was like a metaphor for something, or parts of it were a metaphor for something.
Well, I think first off, the plot as such as it isn't really, it's one of those things where we talk about in detective movies, how the mystery is not really important. The mystery just becomes a gateway for something larger. And in this case, and I'm not the first to say it, the something larger is the clash between the Europeans coming to Australia and the mystery that is the ancient Australia. So you have the order of the Europeans and the English and their very ordered way of life. And then you have the wild nature, sort of inexplicable to the Europeans, that is Australia.
Yeah, I can see that. And then I guess with that, there's this whole idea. I mean, we've seen this throughout other movies and stuff of as advanced as mankind gets, and as much as mankind thinks it can control nature, ultimately we're at nature's mercy. Because at the end of the day, nature can fuck shit up.
Yeah, and I think this movie is more about mood and setting than anything else. I mean, it's watching this movie, don't you feel like you're watching something very mysterious? It feels very eerie, there's like mystery everywhere, and it's unsettling, but it's also beautiful. And I think that is the feeling that you're supposed to get, these girls are getting when they go to this rock.
Yeah, it's very mysterious, and I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did.
And but I'm okay with it not dropping.
I mean, I suppose. So in the book, there was an ending that got cut. I think you know about this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where she explains what happened to them, where I guess they go to another dimension. But I suppose it really, if they had filmed it, I don't know if it would have, I guess it would have taken away from it, right? Because then it kind of lessens everything that happens before. But there's like weird little patterns. Like, for example, 4 girls initially go missing. One of them
three girls and the teacher.
Well, all of the ones that didn't come back, their name starts with an M, but the one that does come back, like the one they find half dead, her name's Irma. So it doesn't start with an M.
So Miss McCraw, Miranda,
and Marion. Irma she's initially part of that group, but she comes back. So you have like that weird thing. I'm assuming it was done on purpose, maybe just for more mystery.
Possibly.
Then there's like these themes of like sexuality and like intellect almost. It seems like these girls that went up there, they were kind of different from the other girls. And the teacher who went up there was different from the other teachers.
You know, they go up there and they take off their shoes and their socks, and they you can see they're wanting to explore nature, I guess, more sensually, while everyone else just falls asleep.
And then later we learned they took off their corsets. So, I mean, to me, it sounds like there's some sort of elements of like sexual liberation and like trying to break away from the constraints of the school and what society wants for them.
Well, it's the order, escaping away from the order that's being imposed on them.
Yeah.
I mean, because the school is very structured, and then they get out into the wilderness, and it's like corsets come off, socks come off. Remember on the buggy, they could take their gloves off after they pass through the town.
Yeah. Well, and this makes me think of did you ever see that movie The Witch? So there's like, you know, that whole theme of how the wilderness is kind of like where Satan lives, and like he seduces women and they go and they almost have like sex with nature, and that's like evil, and that's like the opposite of sort of the Christian world. So you kind of, it almost feels like you have that here. They romanticize everything, and they keep talking about Saint Valentine.
So yeah, they were seduced by nature into another dimension. Seduced by the mysteries of nature. But what did Miss McCraw on the way to the hanging rock? She's talking about how old everything is.
Years,
yeah, around them, and how you can't understand how it is because it's so old, and how wondrous it is.
Yeah, and she's different from the other adults because all the other adults are like pretty stupid. They're not interested in sort of the intellectual stuff, and she's a smart woman, and it seems like her talents are underutilized at the school. And she was the intellectual of the group. So she's different. Like the girls are different from the other girls. The teacher's different from the other teacher and the other adults. And then there's like the two, I don't know, the young men, like how do they figure into this? So one of them.
Well, one's Australia and one's England. And then at the end of the day, though, the English boy starts to shed his Englishness.
But the English boy is the one who risks his life and actually ends up saving one of them.
Right. But my whole point is he I mean, if you watch through the movie, you see him first, he's got like that top hat on and he's all buttoned up. And then slowly he starts to he loses the top hat and he puts on one of those more, I forgot what it's called. It's like the Australian one where the brim's turned up on the side. He becomes less formal. Instead of joining in with the governor's visit, he hangs out with the Australian boy. So you see him like losing that rigidity and order and formality that is associated with the English, and coming over to the more Australian side of it, which is more laid back, more wild.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did miss that. One thing that frustrated me though is like they had all these like multiple search parties, but like no one wanted to go in up to Hanging Rock except for this kid. And then like when he went, it was just like he went by himself. He didn't like his buddy didn't go with him. Like why couldn't a group of these guys just go in there?
I don't know. Is it important? It's
frustrating because it seems kind of obvious, but maybe it had something to do with like their perception of the rock, and there's like a certain element of fear. Because then towards the end, after they find one of the girls, there's like the whole scene where you have like people having like picnics around it and people taking photographs, and it looks like there's a search party like with ropes and stuff getting pictures taken. So it seems like maybe they're gonna do a more earnest search, but they don't, right? It just becomes a spectacle for them.
But then when Irma gets found, did you notice how when she comes back to the school, because they find one of the girls, and I guess they say what her shoes were off, but there's nothing wrong with her feet aren't scarred, and she's like just dehydrated and hungry, and but then she comes back to the school after being missing and seeing a doctor and whatnot, and she's all dressed in red instead of the white from when they all go up there the first time.
Yeah, that's very provocative.
Yeah, so has she been corrupted by her experience, or is that just a way to mark her as an outsider and her experience having changed her from the other girls, or was she different from before and now she's allowed to like display her difference?
It seems like maybe she went through just like a transformation, right? She's kind of maybe free of some of those shackles, and the girls, they start pestering with questions to the point where they're like yelling and crying. So it's like almost like they reject this because they're still trapped, right? So they reject this person coming back that's different from them.
Yeah, they sort of go hysterical.
And the one teacher is just afraid of the whole thing, and she's like hiding behind the piano.
Yeah, they're unsettled by her presence.
You mentioned earlier that there's two versions of this film.
Yeah, this is the reissue director's cut where they took out 7 minutes.
So do we know what happened in those 7 minutes?
I've never seen the original. I thought that I had seen the original and then I became aware that I hadn't. And I don't even know if you can get the original. Maybe on the Criterion they have both, like on the DVD or Blu-ray. But there is a like 5-part miniseries on Amazon Prime that they did, I think 2 years ago. Picnic at Hanging Rock, starring Natalie Dormer as Mrs. Appleyard. And it
Oh,
sort of,
it looks bad. Didn't it get bad reviews?
I watched it. I didn't think it was bad. It's just different.
I think I watched the trailer and it seemed very forgettable, and it looked like all these other kind of like suspenseful shows. But does it feature the disappearance?
Yeah. The mystery's not solved in that either, but I think it flushes out backstories. I mean, I don't know if they really needed to do it, but they did. So,
Yeah. Well, speaking of backstories, there's the one character who's in love with, is it Miranda?
oh, Sarah. Yeah.
Sarah's
Sarah.
in love with Miranda, and she's also at the school under sort of fraudulent circumstances because she was orphaned along with her brother, who is the friend of the English guy.
Butler for the English family.
Yeah, but I guess that it doesn't seem like they don't really know of each other's existence as far as where they are right now.
Right.
And so she's in love with Miranda, and when she realizes Miranda isn't coming back, I guess she throws herself out the window, but it's not clear because she's got this sort of antagonistic relationship with the headmistress. So is it possible that the mistress threw her out the window?
I don't know if the reason that she went out the window is because Miranda, I think that's part of it, that Miranda was gone and she had such deep feelings for Miranda. And I think she felt that Miranda was like the only person she could talk to, but also her tuition bills weren't being paid by whoever was her guardian. And so she was going to have to go back to the orphanage. Mrs. Appleyard was going to send her back. And I think the combination of those two things.
All right, the orphanage where they cut off her hair last time.
Yeah, where she was treated like real shabbily. So I think the combination of those two things sent her out the window. But then again, Mrs. Appleyard was told the French teacher that her guardian came and got her. So she knew that Sarah was missing. So she had to know that Sarah was dead because you wouldn't just say, oh, her guardian came and got her late last night.
I mean, if we're going to be logical about this, the girl threw herself out the window. So Mrs. Appleyard probably heard the window breaking, right?
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
I just feel like Miss Appleyard doesn't want any more bad publicity for her school.
But then why did she leave the body? If she knew the body was in the solarium or whatever it's called, she left it there.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one thing. Maybe it's in the footage she took out.
And Mrs. Appleyard, is that her name?
Yeah, she's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, she's coming unhinged at the end too.
Oh yeah, her hair. I love that's how her hair just starts to slowly come undone as she becomes more and more unhinged.
Yeah, and the implication, I mean, she's becoming unhinged because she's losing students and tuition. So she's afraid that her school's going to go under. And so she starts drinking. And the implication is she kills herself at the end, right? Like, we don't see it, but...
Yeah, they say that she jumped off. And I think that actually was part of the lost footage. Or no, they filmed it, but they didn't use it in either version. You can watch it on YouTube where she goes up to Hanging Rock, and then they have the voiceover that's like, the body of Mrs. Appleyard was found, blah blah blah.
Oh right, yeah. This is like one of those movies I think you have to watch a bunch of times, and kind of like maybe there's no answer, but then I think every time you watch it, you'll pick up on like little clues about the mystery.
So did you like it?
I didn't dislike it. I didn't know what to expect, so I was kind of frustrated because I was like being very sort of logical while I was watching it. But now looking back on it and kind of thinking about it, I do like it.
Maybe you watched it the wrong way. Maybe
I did.
You got to turn off the logic meter in your mind and just watch it and as a visual feast, because it's so pretty. It's a beautiful looking movie.
No, you're 100% right. But even though I was struggling with the plot and the logic of it, I didn't miss the fact that it was very pretty. It had gorgeous shots. And I did, like we talked about the music in Peter Weir's Gallipoli. Yeah, and again here, like the music definitely stands out. And I think it works so much better here than Gallipoli, because Gallipoli, it's about World War One and he's using like late 70s synth music. Here it's like mysterious pan flute, which is
Yeah.
great.
Which also in itself makes you feel like you're listening to something ancient when you hear a pan flute.
Yeah, because you think about like fauns, right? Like mythical creatures in the forest. You haven't read the book, have you?
I did read the book a long time ago. And I read a version, whatever edition I had the lost 12 pages in it too, like in the back.
Okay.
I was probably in high school, maybe junior high.
Yeah, I could see it being real appealing at that age. But no, yeah, I did like it. I'm glad I watched it. So yeah, I don't know if I'd say it's I mean, Renter is a hard endorsement. Definitely stream it.
Yeah, stream it while you can. But if you're into sort of, I always have to have like a little thing. Like if you're into
Coming of age, mysterious coming of age.
I feel like Stefan, it's got everything. Mystery, coming of age, disappearing girls, hysteria. You'll love it.
Accurate. Well, speaking of renting, so I was looking for Point Blank, and
It's on Hulu.
yeah, but it was when I clicked on it on Hulu, it said something like I had to upgrade my subscription to play it. So it was $1.99 on Amazon. So I paid $1.99 on Amazon.
Did you regret it?
I did not regret it.
No, I didn't either. Speaking of visually stunning movies, Point Blank, Payback versus Point Blank.
Yeah, so last time we talked about Payback, which is based on a novel called The Hunter by Donald E. Westlake, writing as Richard Stark. And so Payback is the second adaptation of this novel. The first adaptation was 1967's Point Blank, directed by John Borman, who's probably best known for Deliverance, I would say, and stars Lee Marvin, Angie Dickinson, and Keenan Wynn. Like the other movie, it's about a mysterious man who gets double-crossed and left for dead, and then comes back to single-mindedly try to retrieve the money that was stolen from him. We talked about sort of the weirdness and the visuals of Picnic at Hanging Rock. Like, this movie is trippy.
Yeah, but I liked it.
I liked it too, but there were moments where I was a little confused about what happened, because the central plot is pretty similar to Payback. This guy, his friend asks him to go down on this deal to rob some criminals of their money. They do it. They actually do it at Alcatraz, because that's where the money drop is. And then his friend double crosses him, shoots him, leaves him for dead. Turns out here his name is Walker. In the newer version, it's Porter. Turns out Walker's not dead. He comes back. First thing he does is finds his wife, who helped his friend double cross him, and she ODs on sleeping pills. And there's like that weird scene where he like wakes up, finds her dead, looks out the window, he sees this guy who claims to be a cop. Then he goes back and like the room is empty. And I had to rewind it a couple times to make sure I didn't miss anything. But it seemed like it was almost like a dream. Did you make any sense of that?
No, I was confused on that too. And I was also confused in the scene where because there's lots of flashbacks in this, it's non-linear. And the scene where the friend who later double crosses him tries to convince him to do this like heist was very like, it was really intense. They're like on the floor and he's like, you got to help me. Can you help me? And I was like, did this really happen? So then I started thinking, you know what? Maybe Walker is really not a reliable narrator.
Yeah, that scene is really weird because they showed it throughout the movie. And it's like it's small room that's overpacked with these men who are all drinking and yelling. It's some kind of reunion. I was thinking maybe some didn't they say what it was? It was like a World War II reunion?
It was like his guys who'd served together in the war. I'm like, there's no way that could happen. And so I'm thinking this is like Walker's interpretation in his mind of how these events went down.
Yeah, that's possible. And so also his friend, whose name is Mal Reese, which I think is like a really great character name. So first he starts by going after Mal Reese, who's now used that money to get himself into what do they call it here? It's not the outfit. It's not the syndicate. No, it's not.
The operation.
The operation. Which is like this corporate organized crime structure, whatever you want to call it. So he goes after Mal first, who who says like he can't give him the money, but he gives the name of his supervisor, whose name is Carter. And then so he goes after Carter, who tries to double cross him. And then he ends up going after Fairfax, played by Carol O'Connor.
So it's basically the same as Payback. I mean, they're the
Right.
same structure. He's working his way up the operations chain.
So my question for you is like one of your problems with Payback was that you didn't feel like the villains were worth they didn't seem villainy and like they were worth killing.
Mm-hmm.
Was it different here?
Yeah.
Why?
I think it has to do with Lee Marvin.
Lee Marvin?
I think it has to do with Walker.
Okay.
Because he is just compared to Mel Gibson's Porter, Walker is legit walking vengeance. He's like seething vengeance and coiled violence, and he's kind of a scary guy. And there's none of that comedy one-liners to break the tension. You don't have Lucy Liu as this S&M sort of comedic thing going on. You just have straight up vengeance, melancholy, and violence coming out of Lee Marvin, and there's no break in it. We don't get like release of attention and a little comedic moment. There's none of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think like one of the reasons that Lee Marvin's character is so different is because he doesn't say much. And I think that's an interesting technique. One of the telling scenes is like when he sees his wife again and they're sitting on the couch, and she sort of does this Q&A where like it would be the questions he'd be asking her, but she's just asking for him and he's just sitting there silently, and she's like asking herself his questions and then answering them, and he just keeps sitting there silently and just building this tension. And I think throughout the movie, like he doesn't say very much, and that just makes him more menacing and more intense.
So in Payback, you have these characters, and he like Porter will like have he fought the drug dealer in the hallway, and then he goes and he shoots up. They have the things blowing up and this, that, and the other. And all this talking is going on with Walker. He's like, there's that scene in the Go-Go Club, which was amazing. There's like really no talking. That they're bad guys. They don't have to have an exchange of words. He sees a guy following him. They have this like crazy fight in the back of this Go-Go Club. And that's how all the fights are and how all the sort of violent exchanges are. It's not a whole bunch of yammering going on. It's just he's taking care of business and he just wants his $93,000.
But having said all that, I feel like the movie took a bit of a wrong turn. In the Mel Gibson version, you have the prostitute played by Maria Bello that Porter teams up with. Here it's his wife's sister played by Angie Dickinson. So he kind of teams up with her. And then he ends up sleeping with her while they're waiting for Fairfax. And that seemed out of character for him as this like kind of one track minded force of vengeance. Like I feel like he shouldn't have done that.
I don't think he would have done that if she hadn't like fought him. Well, they didn't really fight.
She was annoying him.
She just kind of like tried to beat him up, and he just stood there. And let me tell you, as she's hitting him and he's just like not reacting, I started to get tired watching her. I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted by this. So by the time she collapses, like, whoo, she was like really trying to like beat the shit out of him, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah, I was going to say that was another fantastic scene in this movie where she's just like hitting him. And I wonder how that was directed, because it almost felt like if I was a director and I was trying to film that, I'd be like, just keep going. Don't stop the camera to
just
the point
go
where
until you can't anymore.
Because usually in a movie you'll see that and it'll be over in like 3 seconds. Here it was like over and over, and she's just hitting him and just like nothing's working, but she won't stop until she exhausts herself. And then I would say I feel like the other weakness here is towards the beginning of the movie, this guy introduces himself as Yost to Walker and claiming to be a cop, claiming he's like I'm after this organization, so I'll sort of help you out because I want them, you want this Mel guy who works for them. And so throughout the movie, Yost kind of jumps in here and there and helps Walker out a little bit. And at the end, we find out that he's actually part of the organization, and there's like supposed to be this double cross between Fairfax and Yost. He's actually not a cop, and so he used Walker. And I felt like that kind of took away.
Yeah, I agree.
Plot. Sort of like what we talked about with the theatrical Payback, where they introduced the son of the the number one guy, and it got a little complicated there. I like this one a lot. It's got that, you know, that late 60s vibe.
Yeah, 60s LA. It looked cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say you love LA. Whatever happened to those go-go clubs? Because I see them in so many movies, and it seemed like they were just a place to go on date night. Because you always see couples there and women.
Yeah, they're like at Marlowe, because there's the whole shootout at the go-go club.
Yeah, actually, and I remember that, and I was wondering if it was the same go-go club because it looked kind of similar.
I don't know, but I like how they put go-go clubs at these movies.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the history of the Go-Go Club and why we don't have them anymore. So I assume you like this version more.
I did. I think less is more.
Yeah, and it's darker, and
It is.
It's more atmospheric and more menacing. Did you happen to read anything about like the making of this movie?
Lee Marvin gave John Boorman basically creative control.
Yeah, I like that part where, like, according to Boorman. So they had a meeting with the executives because Marvin wanted to make this, like he was really into it, and he wanted Boorman to direct. And so Marvin asked the executives, "I have script approval," and they said yes. And he says, "I have approval of the cast," and they said yes. And then he says, "I defer all the approvals to John Boorman," and then he just walked out. So then Boorman had final cut and just like did whatever he wanted. Just so rare these days.
I'm Sydney.
And I'm Jake.
And you've been listening to Two for the Matinee.
Join us next time as we talk about Man on Fire and maybe something else.
No, just say we do some Tony Scott.
Join us next time as we talk about some Tony Scott movies.
Jake's bad with outros.
Join us next time as we explore Tony Scott.
Are we exploring Tony Scott?
And the Scott brothers.